In earlier episodes, we talked about saving money and how to use credit cards responsibly. Today, I want to talk about how to avoid using credit cards altogether. In fact, I want to talk about avoiding any kind of debt at all. While it may not be as easy as having a credit card at your disposal, it is possible and it can be a lot better for you in the long run since loss of employment can happen to anyone. The only thing more stressful than losing your job is having a mountain of debt to contend with after. When I graduated from college with my degree in network administration, I was on top of the world. Until this point, I had only been able to find jobs making mostly minimum wage. I had just gotten laid off from a job where I was making $13 an hour, which wasn't bad in 2007, and I decided I had had enough of these low-paying jobs and wanted a degree. While I started out at this job making $39,000 a year, my employer's private contractor quickly convinced them that I was not making nearly enough for my workload and I was bumped up to around $65,000 a year. I'm so thankful for him because I was new to the technology scene and I had gotten this network specialist job 6 months before graduating college and I had no idea what the pay scale should be. So here I am getting a raise that nearly doubled my salary, and all of a sudden I think I have this endless supply of money. I was wrong. What I had really gotten, at least in my mind, was a license to buy a bigger and better everything. After about a year on the job, I decided I couldn't hack these 18-hour days and then need to drive another 30 minutes home. So I decided to buy a house in the town I worked in. So here I am in a house that I paid $49,000 for and put another $29,000 into to make it what I wanted and decided that I was making decent money, so $150,000 wasn't out of reach. Boy, was that stupid. So here I was in my role as a network specialist for 5 years. For 4 of those years, I had gotten raving annual reviews. Every year, I would march into the superintendent's office and they would ooh and ah over the work I was doing and what I was accomplishing. Then, in that 5th year, we got a new manager in one of the buildings and she decided that she did not want me there. Instead of letting the previous 4 years speak for themselves, they decided to take her word over mine. I had emails upon emails to disprove everything she was saying, yet they decided they would have to lay me off, telling me that it would not do any good to know why I was getting laid off. FYI, they had to hire 3 different people to replace me, plus another 2 to replace the tech assistants that quit after I left. Now, I'm not trying to get a pity party here, and I don't want to give my previous employer a bad rap. They just did what they thought was best with the information they were given, and that's what the superintendent's job was. The point of this part of the story is that no matter how hard you work, some things are just out of your control. And while the loss of my job was out of my control, the debt I was in was completely under my control. So here I was with a $150,000 mortgage and no job. So what could I have done differently? Well, these 18-hour days weren't going to last forever. What I should have done was to make those $1,000 a month mortgage payments on my $600 a month mortgage and get my house paid off early. Then when I sold my house for over $100,000, it would have all been mine to keep and invest in that $150,000 house, only having to get a mortgage on $50,000 of it and continuing to make those $1,000 a month payments and getting it paid off in no time. Unfortunately, it's easy for us to tell ourselves that these 18-hour days are a hardship when we want something. And honestly, this wouldn't have been an everyday occurrence forever. Well, this wouldn't have made me debt free. What's done is done, and learning from our mistakes is figuring out what we have done, what we could have done differently with the situations we were in. And this would have made my debt much lower, putting me in the position to be debt free much, much sooner. So, why am I here telling you about this today? Because I want the lesson that I had to learn the hard way to hopefully be a lesson that you can learn from my experience instead of having to go through the experience yourselves. So, what can you do to prevent this from happening to you? Well, the first thing you can do is realize that you can have a good life with nice things without having to be up to your eyeballs in debt. And being one of the people that have contributed to the nearly $1 trillion in credit card debt, and not being one of the 6 in 10 Americans that are carrying over balances on their credit cards every month. Essentially, as Benjamin Franklin once said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I realize that it's easy for people to say, just don't get into debt, when they aren't living in a situation some of us have had to live in. When I left home, I left with $700, and it was all money that I had saved throughout high school myself. My parents weren't super well off and weren't able to give me a ton of help. Plus, I wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to be independent. So in the end, I'm not going to sit here and say, don't get a credit card. It is okay to have a credit card for emergencies, but make sure that you find one with no fees and a low balance, and you pay that balance in full, if at all possible, and only use it for emergencies. While you have this card as a buffer, keep setting up that rainy day fund we talked about a few weeks ago, and once you have your account well stocked, cut that card up. Car payment? No, thank you. Car prices are climbing higher and higher, and I look at Facebook and see cars for sale that cost more than my house, and I feel like it's insane to pay more for something that you're only going to spend a few hours a week in than something you would live in every single day. So unless you need a car to do your job or you have a crazy commute, you can more than likely get a car that you can pay cash for. And even if you do need a car to do your job, some employers will actually provide you with a company car. If you still feel like you need that more expensive car, next week I'll be posting my How to Make Large Purchases video. Saving for a car is going to get you more of a car than taking out a loan on one. Okay, what about an education? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to save for college because most of you are already past that point, and if you're like me, your parents didn't have the means to set up a college fund for you. But there are other things you can do to pay cash for your education. First, start out at a community or technical college. Tuition is usually half the price of a university, and you can more than likely get all your general education credits and some of your electives transferring to the university after 2 years. Here are a few more ideas. Apply for scholarships, work through college, fill out your FAFSA and take advantage of Pell Grants and work-study programs. Get a full-time job and take online classes instead of having to sit in class. Find an employer that will pay for your college, or join the military. I have a ton of other suggestions and go more in depth on these options in my Getting an Education video. So what about home ownership? I realize renting can feel like a waste of money, but I'm going to refer you back to my story at the beginning of this video. There are definite ways to take on smaller mortgages if you're willing to put in the time and effort. It is possible to even save money and invest money, depositing the dividends into an account and paying cash. People do it all the time. It's not the quickest way, but it will get you there if you're patient. Another option is buying a fixer-upper for cash. This would only apply if you're handy and you could do the work yourself. You could end up paying more for contractors than you could for a house that's move-in ready. Once the house is renovated, you may end up with a house that's skyrocketed in value, giving you the cash you need to buy the house you actually want. Okay, I'm going to be realistic here. Not having a credit score can be a very valid problem. But honestly, if your goal is to live debt-free and you don't need credit for a business you own, does it really even matter? The only thing you may run into without a credit history is having to pay deposits on utilities. But once you get over the hurdle of getting your first utility accounts established, any future providers are more than likely just going to look at that history. In conclusion, debt free is not the life for everyone, but I can tell you one thing. If you ever find yourself in a position where you lost your job, which can happen to anyone, it's a great feeling to know that you don't have to find a way to continue to make payments on a house, a car, credit cards, or any other purchases or file for bankruptcy. Thank you for listening.